Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the Shifts and Pucks podcast, Flames edition. Of course, you can follow us on Twitter at Shifts and Pucks, Facebook.com Shifts and Pucks, YouTube.com Shifts and Pucks. Subscribe wherever you get your audio, as well as it was a very interesting. We are recording on a very interesting day. It was a newsworthy day in Calgary Flamesland. We will get to that in a moment as they embark on essentially was an 8-game road trip with the 7 of their next 8 games on the road. They do play Saturday at home to Dallas, but then 2 in Chicago, Buffalo back to back, home to Dallas, off to Vancouver back to back this weekend, and then on a 5-game road trip. Joined by Matt from Fireside Chat. Matt, how are you doing?
Oh, good. Looking forward to seeing exactly how the next couple weeks will shake out for the Flames. They're so far behind the 8 ball that realistically, even if they won the rest of the month, the remaining 7 games, that they would still probably be in like 28th.
Yeah, it's I think they're behind the 8 ball, and if it's like all of the if your stripes, there's all softballs blocking, dark balls blocking your only remaining scratch stripe ball. It's you need a trick shot to get back into the playoffs, and that's
that ship has sailed. I feel
that ship is long past our Burrard Inlet. I think it's way out into the Alaskan seas, but.
Just a point of note for how bad San Jose was last year, at the 20-game mark, they had more than 15 points.
What was their record last year?
I think they had like 67 points, something like that. And like they were quite terrible, but even them last year, as terrible as they were still better than what we are now.
Yeah, I thought that we'll get to the week here. I did think that there was a few good things, but we'll get to that. We'll start. I wanted to start. We did this at the Vancouver Canuck podcast, but wanted to pay tribute to a guy that probably, if he's really one of those pioneers, we're not here without the work that this guy has done. Larry Brooks passed away from cancer this week. Last week on November the 13th. So that was last Wednesday, 75 years old, and really impacted the hockey community in a lot of ways. I mean, you heard a lot of tributes from Bob McKenzie came out of Twitter hibernation to post a tribute. Molly Walker, who covers the Rangers now, posted a tribute. There was a lot of tributes from hockey players as well. Was a guy like he covered them for over 40 years, and he was awarded the Elmer Ferguson Memorial Award in 2018. He's made a tremendous impact. Even John Tortorella paid tribute to him. Of course, one of the more famous clips is the Torts and Brooks confrontation, but I wanted to make sure that we honored a guy that paved the way for a lot of the aspiring media or current media in the NHL in a very tough market. A very tough sports market. The expectations of that New York audience very high, not only just for the teams, but really the media covering the teams. It's a very demanding market, and he did a phenomenal job. I don't know what else there is to say about Larry Brooks.
No, and I agree with everything you just said. Like, he was a trailblazer for media, and most well known probably for his fights and arguments with Tortorella, which was always fun. It's always sad when somebody passes away. Condolences to his friends and family and the whole New York Rangers community.
Yeah, for sure. Yep, for sure. Let's get to the Flames, who they had a week. one win, one regulation win, one regulation loss, one shootout loss. They lose to the Blues 3-2. They were down 3-0 halfway through the game. They finally broke their goose egg, incredible goose egg from Chicago to Minnesota into St. Louis. It was about 154 minutes before Matt Coronado broke that. They beat the Sharks 2-0 in Calgary, and they lose to the Jets in a shootout 4-3, which was a fairly back and forth game. Matt Coronado scored a late power play goal to tie the game, but the Jets do end up winning in a shootout. Which I had a few storylines in that game itself. But Matt, what were some of your takeaways from the week?
Well, the St. Louis Blues game specifically, if this was a year ago, this team would have found that equalizer and maybe got the second point in overtime. At this point in the season, the Flames had about 54 goals, and they now have 43. And if you look at the Flames' losses, 11 of their 15 combined losses have been by one goal with or without an empty netter afterwards. So, like if the Flames had found that extra goal here and there, like they're basically in the middle of the pack with everybody else. But they're just not finding that late third period comeback goal that they're used to. And, like they had a really great effort to draw it within one and then just couldn't turn the engine over to get that extra point or two.
Yeah, that was they turned it. Like I didn't think they played too bad they did not play well in Chicago against Chicago. They
No.
did play well against Minnesota, but they couldn't beat Jesper Wallstedt. And I thought they played pretty well against St. Louis in the second half of the game. It just felt like when Coronado scored, they felt like the team just kind of grabbed some energy from that and started to push, but they couldn't get that final goal. Against San Jose, they came out jumping. It was Askarov that kind of held San Jose in the game. I mean, lots of shot attempts, and you almost feel for Dustin Wolf in this one because it's 1-0 for most of the game, and Macklin Celebrini, who was I thought Michael Backlund did a really good job on him. He still gets an opportunity late in the game and just misses it by that much to almost tie the game. And then the Winnipeg game, that was a back and forth game. It's a lot to take out of that. I think they get that goal that you're talking about, that late power play goal from Matt Coronado. We're going to talk about shootout decisions as will be a topic of discussion, but I think the good thing that it came out of this is Matt Coronado is starting to find his game, and I think it's been arguable he's been the best Flames forward by a pretty good chunk this week.
Yes. It's also interesting to note how poorly the Winnipeg Jets played defensively at times in this game, especially the equalizing goal. Like, you can't leave two guys, especially, a guy like Klapka, who's 6'7", to screen the goalie, and, the Flames' best shooter alone with no defenseman even in the area.
Yeah, Adam Klapka is hard to miss. He's the tall guy in the red jersey. You probably should try to cover him.
Yeah, it's just a thought.
Yeah, just maybe a minor suggestion. But, and by the way, the St. Louis Blues in their own end, good grief, that was horrendous.
Oh, yeah.
If that was a St. Louis Blues we were a St. Louis Blue podcast, we'd be spending a good chunk of time of how horrendous they are in their own end.
Yeah.
My God.
Well, and we even, when we saw them in Calgary at the beginning of the season, I was actually at the game with Dan, and we were both commenting that, what the hell is wrong with the Blues defense? It was just atrocious for the first, 35 minutes of the game. It got a little bit better as the game went on, but it was here, have a free puck.
Yeah. Yeah, and San Jose was not that great either. So, 3 teams that they faced were not great defensively. But
No.
um, yeah, I think Matt Coronado has found his game, and I feel like we're this close to seeing a multi-goal game from Matt Coronado here soon. I think that line of Frost and Huberdeau is kind of working. Um, we'll get to Rory Kerins in a bit. Speaking of the 6'8" Klapka, I think he's continuing to impress. I think it's very interesting that he spent some time with Kadri in the Winnipeg game. I know that there's some people that do not buy into Adam Klapka, but he is probably the hardest working forward on the Flames right now, and he is making it very difficult for Ryan Huska to scratch him. Like you cannot scratch Adam Klapka. You have to play him more because he's putting in the effort. Not like
Yeah, and like talent wise, he's not the best player, but having a 6'7" guy who hits and drives the net, it's like, yeah, sign me up. Like, like there are 32 teams that want guys like Klapka on their team, and it helps create space for his line mates. Unfortunately, playing with Zari and Lomberg, you're not going to generate a ton. But it has been interesting to see him get some looks with some better players, and hopes of creating a little bit more space for guys like Kadri, like Kerins, like whomever.
Yeah. I think the defense pairings have kind of settled out a little bit. I think Jan Kuznetsov has found a comfortable position with Mackenzie Weegar. Bean and Pahal are not doing too bad, and Ball and Anderson are not doing too bad. I suspect we'll probably see Joel Hanley back in the lineup at some point in time. But I think the defense is kind of settled at this point without.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, with Perek being out probably till close to the World Juniors anyway, I feel that you're probably seeing the defense pairings by and large as they will be for the next few weeks.
Yeah. And shout out to Michaela Sheedy, who had an adventure with her national anthem, and the Flames fans sung along with her, and she recovered. That was kind of a neat little thing. And Mark Scheifele, there's always a microphone.
Yeah,
you have to be careful. Watch for the hot mic.
Yeah, well, Scheifele has always been a hothead. He doesn't use swear words, but his attitude is. Frankly, if he did swear, he would be thought of in a similar vein as Kadri in the early part of his career, overreacting to what was a perfectly fine defensive play by Weegar. It was not a penalty at all. And, basically throwing a tantrum, holding Weegar shortly thereafter and taking the penalty in overtime and then spazzing on the ref. It just... grow up.
What did you think of Lowry's hit on Kadri?
Perfectly fine hit. Like that you're supposed to finish your check. He did. Kadri saw it coming, so he braced for impact, didn't get hurt. Perfectly fine, normal, solid hit. That's how hockey should be played, and guys know how to get hit and deliver a hit. Nobody got hurt on the play, and perfect, basically.
Yeah, and that wasn't the only newsworthy item of that game. Unfortunately, Michael Backlund ran into Samuel Honzek, and now Honzek is out week to week with a upper body injury. And that caused some transactions today in Calgary. And it was a little bit of a surprise, I have to admit, that Rory Kerins was sent down and Sam Morton and Dryden Hunt were called up. Like, were you surprised it was Rory Kerins that was getting sent down first?
Yeah, I've just figured that Hunt or Morton would get called up, or Kirkland, perhaps, especially with the shootout. Could get somebody to that can actually score in the shootout. But, like I figured it was going to be one of those three. And I'm kind of a little baffled at why Kerins got sent down. Like, if you look at the advanced stats, like basically his line with Kadri was dominating in the games that they played. Like they outchanced the other team 10-1 when they were on the ice. They didn't score, but they did basically everything but that in the 2 games that they played. It's a little mystifying that if you're wanting to get guys runway to succeed, especially the younger players, why you wouldn't just let that rip. But interesting decision.
I was surprised, but then it started to make a little bit more sense for me as I thought about it during the day. The Wranglers are on a pretty lengthy road trip as well, going through California this week. I think at some point you are trying to. We are getting to that point. You mentioned this earlier, Matt. We're getting to the point now where decisions need to be made. And Igor Sharangovich was scratched for all 3 games this week. He didn't play the St. Louis game. So you do need to put and look, I know, like, I think Kerins has played better than Sharangovich, but Sharangovich is making $5.75 million. So you need to get him back into the lineup. I know that I am in no way defending the play of Igor Sharangovich, but I think we are now in the point of a put up or shut up moment, at least for Igor Sharangovich, maybe for Connor Zary, but definitely for Igor Sharangovich. And I think that this ultimately was a lineup decision. And if you were going to scratch, the decision to either scratch Kerins and eat popcorn on this road trip, or just let Kerins play with Calgary with the Wranglers, I think it was a bit better decision to have him play with the Wranglers and have Dryden Hunt eat the popcorn. And like the onus now is on both Igor and Connor Zary, who kind of went public about his frustration with ice time with Wes Gilbertson. I think it's pretty clear that he's been very frustrated. It's time, like the onus is on both of those players to step up and prove where they are at. And I think for me, the player with the most pressure right now is Igor Sharangovich. I think that you are in a position where you may have to make a pretty significant decision of what you're doing with him within the next couple of weeks.
Well, and realistically with Sharangovich, he has 4 more seasons after this one. There's not really anything you can do. Like, the Flames are going to be terrible, probably for the duration of the contract. So, like, there is no incentive to buy the contract out. And it's one of those you just have to hope, much like with Kuzmenko in the early part of last season, that he finds a way to figure out his game. And like, realistically, what I would do is move Zary up to the Coleman Backlund line for the duration of the Honzek injury. Try to get him going again on a line where he can be sheltered a bit by those 2 guys. Put Sharangovich on the first line in Kerins' spot and have Sam Morton draw in as the 4th line center. Yeah. And, try to get those guys going somehow. And, if it works, great. If it doesn't, well, thankfully, Zary's contract is only another year after this one. And, sometimes players just don't work out. And, the Sharangovich contract too, like, the Flames need to hit the cap floor. And, we see that, like, teams like San Jose have Carey Price on their payroll just to hit the cap floor. And Calgary, like, if they are planning on moving guys like Coleman, like Kadri, like Anderson, you're still going to need to be above the cap floor. So it's not necessarily a terrible thing to have a contract like that in fact, the Flames probably will end up taking another one or two, like an Andre Palat type contract from New Jersey in a trade, just to make sure that they're above that cap floor.
Right. But I think with both of them, and especially with Sharangovich, they do need to start to see some sort of progress here.
Yeah.
And
Sharon Govich, even like every year that we've had him, except for the 30-goal season, he struggled early in the season, and then by December he started turning it around.
yeah,
So we'll see. And like there is a reason why New Jersey let him go. So we'll see. It's hard to say because he has been very inconsistent, but the talent is there.
yeah, I think the talent is there for both Sharangovich and Zary. I really do. It feels like for Sharangovich, does he tear? Does he like it doesn't you don't have to smash a stick or anything like that, but it just doesn't it doesn't feel like there's a lot of passion at times from Igor. But I mean, last year it was different because he was recovering from an injury, so it took a while for him to get going. This year it's not an injury; it seems more.
Yeah, because like in the second half of last season, just to add to that, like he was basically on the same pace as he was in his good season with the Flames, where he scored over 30 goals. And it's like, oh, okay, well, it was just the injury hampering him in the early part of the year. He still managed to get 20 goals last year, and it's hard to see, if he can bounce back. Sometimes, like even Kuzmenko really fought the puck at the beginning of last year and then had a couple of bounces go his way, and he built up enough trade value to land Frost and Farabee in that trade. So, it's one of those we'll see. Still have 4 more years after this one to worry about it, though. So, I don't expect much to change whether he does good or bad.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And I am kind of looking forward to seeing what Sam Morton can do. I think he's worked pretty hard to get himself into this lineup. And I think it's just like, look, you're not putting Rory. For the people that are complaining about the Rory Kerins, like the one thing I would say is if you're moving Zary and Sharangovich up in the lineup, I don't think Ryan Huska wants Rory Kerins to play in the bottom six. He doesn't seem as that type of player. In that sense, it makes that's why I think it makes more sense for him not to be a healthy scratch, but to play with the Wranglers because he's continuing to develop some chemistry. And it's probably I think we're going to see Rory Kerins in the second half of the year. I think he's going to play.
Oh yeah, I agree. And how do you say this was kind of a audition for him for down the road? And in my books, like outside of him scoring a couple of goals or setting up perfect things, like he did everything that you could ask from him. So like if they trade a Kadri or a Coleman or insert any buddy basically up front, that you'll see him back up probably to stay for the next couple of years and see how it goes.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, and Morton just fits that fourth line role a little bit more, and so I feel like a lot of people are taking a lot of opportunities to shoot Huska down for some of these decisions, and I think with Connor Zary, this is a. Do you see the Sam Bennett comparison?
Yes, yes, and it's one of those where the Flames do need to get him some consistent ice time, and that's why I would like to see him with Backlund and Coleman, because he had a lot of success with them when he was there with them, to kind of just hit the reset button on the year. But he does need to get an opportunity to actually have a bit of a runway, and it might end up being one of those situations where come the trade deadline, it might be like an Anderson plus Zari trade for X and Y type of thing. We'll see. Like you saw last year with the Cousins trade, where two good younger players went from Ottawa to Buffalo. That were both kind of reclamation projects. You could see something along that line, where Zari is that, formerly, thought of as a potential second line player getting moved in a deal.
Yeah. Well, and by the way, Dennis Gilbert is back with Ottawa again. He went full circle. He went to Philadelphia and was back, Ottawa
I
reacquired
know.
him.
Yeah, it's like, what, you think you can leave?
Yeah.
That's not in the contract.
Yeah. You're stuck. Yeah. By the way, that turned out to be a really horrible trade for Buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I guess my other question is I feel like too many people are blaming Huska for this.
Oh, yeah. Oh, how would you say the Flames should have been a bottom 5 team last year and basically got all the way to basically tying for a playoff spot because of the coaching decisions that he made? Everybody got a year older, and where guys were getting into those spots to get that tying goal, or the overtime goal, um like those just aren't there this year. And like if you add like 5 or 6 points to the Flames point totals, from say they came back in a number of them, like they're right in that pack with everybody else, where it's like 2 points and you're in the top 10. Like, the Flames just aren't getting that. And it's not any one thing, it's just general regression from everybody. Like Kadri's not quite scoring as much as he was. Huberdeau, same thing. Sharon Govich, same thing. Like, that's what happens. And like the team is not doing very well. They don't have a bona fide leading goal scorer, that you can certifiably count on as being a 30-goal guy or more. And like realistically, if this team wants to be good, you need like 3 or 4 of those guys. And even organizationally in the system, we don't have that guy.
No.
So, it's one of those. Not being good just sucks.
Yeah, that's just the reality of the situation right now. Like,
Like you could have Scotty Bowman coaching the Flames, they'd still probably be in the bottom 5. Like,
yeah,
there's only so much you can do.
yep. That's all. Yeah, that's really it at this point. It's not a good hockey team. They are battling out there, and I mean, it's unfortunate because I think with Huska, like I think he's taken a lot of unnecessary shots in terms of what his coaching decision is. He doesn't have a lot to work with. And I think that I think that a lot of there's a lot, to me, I look at a guy like Sam Honzek and the work that he's put in to keep himself in the lineup. I look at a guy like Adam Klapka and the work that he's done to keep him in the lineup. Even Jan Kuznetsov and the work that he's done to find his way to keep himself in the lineup. I'm struggling to say that you are, like, my problem with the Zary debate is I think that Connor Zary has to take some ownership over his game. And I think he is.
Yeah.
I think he literally is. He's probably taking too much of the onus because of the way that, like, I think he's clearly frustrated. And I think playing with Backlund will help him. But I think for those that are criticizing Huska for the Zary ice time, I think you're letting Zary off the hook because he hasn't been that good enough this year.
No, and you saw like the Flames last year that all of the guys were engaging a lot more physically and kind of wearing down their opponents. And you had guys like Pospisil, like Zari, going in and hitting people on a regular basis. And that engagement physically helped to wear down the other teams. they're not doing that this year. The only guy that hits consistently are Klapka and Lomberg. And, when you only have 2 out of 12 that are consistently engaging that way, it's hard to wear down the other team.
Yep. Yeah. They do miss Pospisil. I think that whenever he gets back, he'll add another element to that for sure.
Yeah.
The other thing that Husk is getting criticized for is shootouts, and we'll head over. So let's go to the Winnipeg game and let's look who did the shootouts. And we saw this in the Edmonton game where I think Kadri was the night with that one. He was like the last shooter.
Yeah, he was the 8th guy for the
Yeah.
Flames. 8th or 9th. Yeah.
And this time it was Rasmus Andersson that got the last shot. And I'm going to try to get to the shootout here.
Yeah, Kadri, Huberdeau, and Anderson were the 3 shooters for the Flames.
Yeah, are we do we I guess
honestly, what's Husk gonna do with the shootout? The Flames have no shooters on their team that are creative and dynamic. And like like that's why like Kirkland was very important to the team a year ago, because he was the only guy who was creative enough to generate some shootout goals. But most of the guys on the Flames team just are not good in the shootout. And when you have 18 skaters and maybe only 1 or 2 are semi good at the shootout, it's kind of hard to get a winning lineup out of that.
Yeah.
Because, honestly, Sharon Govich is probably the best guy on the team currently as it is, with Kirkland not being here. But he wasn't playing, so, he's not available. And, there's not really anybody else that's shown anything with any consistency. And, how I would take it is, okay, you 3 didn't score this time. We'll try, say, Coronado, Zari, and, insert name of third person here that happens to be playing in the next one. If you score, you get to go in the next shootout. If you don't, and just kind of cycle through the team. And, if you're not getting those kind of results, just, who cares if you're sending Jan Kuznetsov out if he scores?
Right.
Shake it up.
It was Frost, Huberdeau, Anderson on Saturday. Winnipeg used Connor, Tays, and Velarde. So I don't think that Winnipeg did anything that different. Clearly Kyle Connor and Gabe Velarde are probably the 2 best players that are in this shootout. Yeah. But Jonathan Tays is a third, fourth line center. You got him out there, Kyle Connor, and then you've got Morgan Frost is either your 2C, and Jonathan Huberdeau is probably your number 1 winger, and Rasmus Anderson. I thought I think he was just rewarded for playing a good game, and
Well, Anderson has been good in the shootout previously. Whatever that shot attempt was, who the hell knows? But yeah, honestly, that looked like me as a shooter, as a former goalie, trying to take a shot. Okay, yeah, that was not a good effort at all. But it is what it is, and just I wouldn't mind them spending a little bit of time in practice, or at the end of a practice, to have a little shootout competition, and anybody who shows a pulse gets a shot.
Yeah. It is. I think it's clearly was an issue that cost them a playoff spot last year.
Yeah, you would think that they would be working on that, occasionally, at the end of a practice, hey, let's just, divvy up the sticks and, have a little shootout competition between everybody. And
Yeah, I agree with you. I think this is because this is more of a team needs to figure it out than like the coach always gets the criticism when
Yeah,
something.
but looking at the team, it's like, me as like, like what I would do in that position, I'd be like, uh, you know, sure, you go, like,
Yeah, yeah,
and just point to a random person because, what do you want?
yeah, yeah,
Like, there's not really much here to choose from. So, eh, yeah, it's tough, but the Flames are just not in a good spot. it,
yeah,
you know, it just sucks, and there always needs to be a 30-second team, and this year it's our turn, it seems, and
yeah. That's the way it is. Yeah.
yeah.
Anything else in terms of the Flames that we should talk about?
Uh, I would like for the Flames to find a way to have their younger players stay healthy. Like Muse is out for the year.
Yeah,
Maceo Phillips got hurt a while back. He's back. Um,
he's
Honzek,
going to be on the
he's out.
U.S. junior team.
Yeah,
That's going to be good.
and it, of course Breck's out. So maybe get some bubble wrap for the young guys. Beyond that, just have to wait and see. I don't foresee this next stretch of games working out too well for the Flames, but you know, anytime that you count this team out, they find a way to surprise, or expect them to win, they'll find a way to lose. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's. I kind of feel that they are like too far out to really make anything in terms of the playoffs. I wouldn't. I do think that there's a winning streak that will be coming before Christmas, whether it's on this road trip or not. We'll see. I mean, this Buffalo Chicago, those are two winnable games. Although Buffalo beat Edmonton tonight 5-1, by the way. So things are things are going. What's comforting is things continue to go horribly wrong and on the north of the city that you're in, Matt.
yep,
Uh,
can't complain about that.
no,
No, and like realistically, like the Flames are 9 points out of a playoff spot, and the ninth or eighth place team has 2 games in hand. So like not a very good spot for this team to be in.
no, definitely behind a huge 8 ball. I which games do you think Devin Cooley gets? There's two back
I
to back.
would probably say just the Buffalo game. Um,
I think he's going to get one of the other ones in Dallas, the Dallas Vancouver one. I think I
uh,
would like to
uh,
see him get two.
yeah, I think because there's a couple games off or days off between the Vancouver and the Tampa game next week, that you'll see Wolf probably start back to back. Like there's no like late game, early game situation for any of the 4 games. I think the Chicago one 6:30 our time, then 5:30, and then 8, and then 7:30. So I feel that Wolf probably gets 3 of the 4, with the Buffalo one being the Cooley game.
Yeah, because it's 23rd is a Sunday, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And then after that, they go to Florida on the 28th, and then they got Carolina on the 30th, doing that southern stretch. Has Cooley started at home yet?
No.
I wouldn't mind him. I wouldn't mind him. This is what I would do. It's Wolf Chicago, Cooley Buffalo, Cooley Dallas, Wolf Vancouver.
I could see it. It just depends on like how much the Flames feel that they still have a chance to get back into things.
Yeah,
Like if they win 2 or 3 of those games, they might, you know, be more willing to entertain Cooley being in more often. but I think that we'll see. It's hard to tell.
Yeah, for sure. I guess the one other thing there's been some talk about this. I'm just curious if you're worried about this or on a scale of 1 to 10. Craig Conroy does not have a contract for next year. Scale of 1 to 10, how much does that worry you as of November 2 days? 8, yeah.
Not at all. He will get a contract extension. He has done as good of a job as a GM can do under the circumstances. Like, he was kind of thrown into a really lousy situation after Treliving left. There's not really anything he could do besides what he did. So we'll see. It's much like fans being all up in arms about Huska. I feel that both of them have done a very good job considering the cards that they've been dealt. The writing was on the wall that this team was going to be a bottom 5 team. They should have been last year. They, worked their butts off to get to a tie for a playoff spot. Reality sets in. They're at where they should be based off the talent of the roster, beat everybody else. There's not one team in the NHL where you look at and say, oh, Calgary has the more talented roster. So, they're going to be bad. It's, part of the ebbs and flows. And, you'll see this team start to hopefully move off some people like Coleman, like Anderson, and, see guys like Gradine and Kerins and Bruce Davidge come up down the road and, get a little bit more youth in the lineup.
Yeah. I think we're starting to see that trend a little bit that way already. I mean, you bring up Kerins. I guess it's a little bit, it was only 2 games and he's back down, but I think we're going to start to see that a little bit more, like slowly but surely. And
yeah, like I would expect, like if say they deal Coleman, I would expect Stromgren to get called up permanently for the rest of this season and probably part of next year, and just kind of start to cycle some of the older young guys on the Flames farm team up and give Poirier a shot, Bruce Davis a shot, and cycle through. And I feel like Kuznetsov is permanently going to be a part of this team for the rest of the season based on his play. I feel of the 6-7 guys that he is the best of the bunch. So yeah, we'll see. I just feel that you're going to start to see guys get moved probably before the Olympics. A guy like Lomberg, he's a free agent at the end of the year. I would not expect him to be here at the end of the season. Maybe moving on from Pospisil if he's healthy. Just start transitioning from the slightly older guys to more of the younger guys and get that team transitioning.
The 4 guys that I could see moving are Coleman, Anderson, Hanley, and Lomberg.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know if Kadri moves.
Kadri, if Kadri wants to not be in a dead last team, he will be on somebody else's team. There will be 31 teams looking at Kadri and saying, yes, please, we would like to add that player. So, it's just one of those that, the Flames, the writing's on the wall. They're not going to be good for the next few years. It's up to him whether he wants to try and win another Stanley Cup with insert team here or wants to hold out and, like a team like New Jersey, for example, would be more than happy to flip Palat here for Kadri and a whole bunch of other assets coming our way. So, we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. I did say this to Dan, though. I would not be surprised in the New Scotia place. I do think that they'll have a office space open for Michael Backlund to be part of the organization in an
Yeah.
off capacity. I could see that with Nazem Kadri too. I could
Yeah.
see them opening some office space for him too. I do think that this organization has a tremendous amount of respect. I do believe that Murray Edwards is a fan of Nazem Kadri.
Yeah, and it's one of those where, like, basically any of the veteran guys from before, like even a couple of years ago with the Lindholm, Hannafin, Tanev situation, they offered them all contracts. Do you want to stay here? Okay, no, you don't. So, okay, now give us some, direction on where you want to go. Here you go.
Yeah.
And even harkening all the way back to Iginla and Bouwmeester, like 12 years ago, it was the same situation where, okay, where do you want to go? We'll get you there. And, they've always had that respect with players where they just, work with them to find the right fit for what they're doing. And, guys like Anderson, like Coleman, like Kadri have all earned the right to have a say in their destination. And, I would expect the Flames to try to get them to where they want to be, whether that's staying here or moving on. And, how would you say the results on the ice don't matter nearly as much because, whether they're here or not, we're not going to be very good. So,
yeah, it's definitely the downtime for the Flames, and it's that rebuilding that everybody has been kind of speculated. It's happening now, and
well, and realistically, like myself, like when the last time that the Flames kind of bottomed out, I was kind of frustrated at the team at that point because like they rebuilt, but only to an extent instead of embracing the teardown. And like you look at those drafts and getting say Draisaitl instead of Sam Bennett, or a McKinnon or a Barkov instead of Monahan, like this team could have been, you know, basically the Florida Panthers, but they they didn't embrace the bad enough then, and I'm hoping that they just the fan base has been kind of clamoring for it for a long time. So
you're not going to beat Connor McDavid. You're not going to beat these teams without some sort of elite top player. And and the Tankers are right when they say you have to get to the top of the draft. I'm not disagreeing with that.
no.
What I am saying is you also need to draft well from 2 to 7.
Oh, for
And build
sure.
around
And the
that.
Flames have, over the last handful of years, have shown a good propensity to get guys late in the first round, in the second, and the third round that are looking to be quality NHL players, like Gradin. Potter last year is looking really good. Sunayev, who was a third round pick. Kuznetsov was second round pick. Like they're getting some guys that are actually looking like potential, good players for this team. So
Rory Kerins is a 6th round pick.
yeah,
People forget that. So
yeah, and you just have to. I look at the Mammoth / Coyotes, and like what they did was they got like 13, 14 draft picks every year for a number of years, just threw all the darts at the board that they could. They hit on a handful of them, and like they're looking like one of the next up and coming teams in the NHL. And the Flames kind of have to follow suit of just get as many darts, throw them at the board, and you will hit on a few of them. So go for it.
yeah, and they're doing pretty good. They're doing pretty good in terms of drafting under Conway. I don't think that's been much of a criticism there. So far, so good in terms of that. You just got to get You got to get that top guy. They
Yeah.
don't have that top elite guy yet, and you've got to start building the elite
Yeah.
skill.
And, like if you look at the guys that they could trade, like you might get a first round pick for Anderson, you might get a first round pick for Kadri. Like if you can get those assets into the lineup, and and they pan out, like that's like the next generation of the team where, you're getting like another Matt Vagradine or Potter or Reshny, depending on, you know, who falls where. Like all of those players are very useful for the rebuild. So, if they can cash out some of those assets and get some new young guys in, that's also going to help this team in the long term.
Yep. I totally understand that. For sure.
It just sucks having to watch it, because like say like for Anderson, like he's been one of my favorite players for basically since we drafted him, and it sucks that he's not going to be here next year, but there's literally no sense in keeping him. So it's part of the business.
Yeah, unfortunate for sure.
Yeah.
Well, let's leave it there. What are you guys doing on Fireside Chat?
We're going to be reviewing the 4 games of fun that are coming up this week, and hopefully, having some positive things to say. And that's about it.
Yeah, well, for us, we'll be chatting Canucks at some point. Won't be Sunday. We'll be probably Monday or Tuesday next week. So we're probably trying to stay tuned for us in terms of our schedule. We've got a few things going on. I've been doing some solo recaps of some of the Flames Canucks games. So check them out as well. We'll probably I'll just do a quick write-up of the Vancouver, Florida game and probably record a podcast for the Calgary games this week, which are Chicago and Buffalo. It just depends on the schedule. But you can follow us all on Twitter, Shifts and Pucks, Facebook.com, Shifts and Pucks, YouTube.com, Shifts and Pucks. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Follow Fireside Chat on social media. Subscribe wherever you get your fine podcasts. All free. Like and subscribe. Tell your friends about all of us. And it just gives us a little bit more notoriety if you enjoy the podcast. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Thank you for listening. We will talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.